Right. So moving on to today's topic of conversation, or main topic of conversation, as I've mentioned already, we're delighted to have two esteemed experts join today's session to talk through particular issues that they have great expertise and experience in. So we're delighted to introduce Lizzie Mills. She's a development team member of the MINT Academy, based in the UK, which is a groundbreaking initiative that empowers engineers to build better medtech through early structured clinical exposure. With deep roots in neurorehabilitation, MINT supports a new generation of developers to understand real-world clinical needs by embedding them in clinical teams and settings. Lizzie's work focuses on reducing the gap between invention and implementation by fostering meaningful partnerships between the clinical and engineering world. This is, of course, critical for the development and adoption of the technologies that are being developed by people on this call and the wider community. So we're delighted to welcome Lizzie, and I will hand over to you to talk through your slides.
Thank you, Matt. So that I forgot that was going to be an introduction to me. So that was very, very kind to introduce me. But yes, my name's Lizzie. I'm a specialist neurophysiotherapist and MINT development team member. So I, like most physiotherapists, started my career in the NHS, where I worked for about 4.5 years, where I became interested in neuro rehab. And I've now been at Hobbs Rehabilitation for about 5.5 years. And today I'm going to introduce you to Hobbs and the MINT Academy to discuss the importance of robotics in neurorehabilitation, where it continues to gain traction, as well as some of the barriers and opportunities around this. Much of this comes from research, as well as personal experience from myself and other colleagues within the MINT development team. Are you in charge of my slides, Matt, still? Or is it me? I don't know. Next slide coming. Thank you. So to give you a bit of an understanding, a summary about the development of the MINT Academy has to start with Hobbs Rehabilitation. It's a multidisciplinary neurorehabilitation company that was founded in 2005, and Hobbs currently operates out of 9 centres across the south of England, and we offer a variety of services which range from high-intensity rehabilitation packages, both residential and outpatient, and through to things like community home-based therapy as well. So over the years, Hobbs clinicians have been using a range of technologies within clinical practice, some on a try before you buy basis, and some we've invested in. We've tried many different devices from many different companies, but integrating technology was not always as straightforward as you would hope. But a new venture was born in 2018, the MINT Academy, to try and tackle some of the barriers into integrating neurotechnology into practice. Next slide, please. So MINT stands for the Masterclass in Neurotechnology, and the vision of MINT was to bridge the gap between the device, the patient, and the clinician. So for patients, the benefits of this are enhanced outcomes via neuroplasticity being more effectively driven by responsive and intensive rehabilitation. For clinicians, MINT empowers them to increase their knowledge, skills, and clinical reasoning so that they can implement technology in their practice, as well as form networks with other clinicians working to progress in that field. And for the device, we want to clinically influence design to ensure that useful devices are embedded into practice, whilst gathering more data and evidence for service development models and academic research. Next slide, please. So we are now 7 years down the line from the creation of MINT, and we continue to see a market accelerating in terms of projected growth, yet we haven't witnessed widespread adoption and clinical utilization. We as therapists and practitioners have an opportunity to facilitate the implementation of robotic rehab devices into our clinical practice, but to do so, certain factors need to be considered when you look through the lens of the clinician. Next slide, please. So what do analysts tell us? Robotics in neurorehabilitation has gained momentum due to the advancements in technology, patient demand for better recovery methods, and evidence of effectiveness. Research shows that the adoption of robotic technologies varies greatly by region. Countries like Japan, Germany, and the US have seen high levels of adoption due to a strong healthcare infrastructure and research funding. The global rehabilitation robot market size was estimated at $428 million in 2024 and is projected to grow to $1.03 billion, which equates to a compounded annual growth rate of approximately 15.2% from 2025 to 2030. It's huge. So in 2024, the hospitals and clinic segments dominated the market and accounted for the largest revenue share of about 47.1%. And that's primarily due to the rise in healthcare spending and the rapid acceptance of advanced technology in healthcare centres. The proposed growth for this is driven by several key factors. We're seeing more technological advancements. We are seeing an aging population, as well as an increasing prevalence of neurological disorders. We're seeing improving cost effectiveness and accessibility to devices. We're seeing improvements in the healthcare infrastructure, and we're seeing increasing government support and funding for these devices. So despite what the analysts are telling us, we've yet to see the true adoption of robotics into clinical practice, and we need to think about why is this the case? Next slide, please. I'm sorry, my cat is trying to attack my chair. Stop it. I think she might have stopped for now. So the perceived likelihood of adopting technology is dependent on the direct effect of 7 key constructs as listed on screen: performance expectancy, effort expectancy, social influence, facilitating conditions, hedonic motivation, price value, and habit. But in short, does the clinician think that the technology will be useful, easy to use, be seen as important to use by others, be integrated into their organization's infrastructure? Will it be fun? And is it cost effective? If we're able to tick all of these boxes, that's a great start, but we're more likely to succeed in bringing the technology into clinical practice as if we are ticking these boxes. Okay, next slide. So we need to think about what other barriers are existing outside of those 7 key points. So the cost to purchase and own technology. So with limited reimbursement opportunity, this is quite a big barrier. So many healthcare providers or insurance plans don't cover robotic rehabilitation devices or therapies. And studies have noted that reimbursement policies for robotics are still in early stages, and they're really impacting clinical adoption. Communication to all stakeholders involved in the process will negate a range of complex and interrelated factors that can influence the adoption of rehabilitation technologies. Importantly, many of the issues that have the potential to negatively impact rehab technology adoption may be addressed during pre-installation and by utilising the experience and expertise of key clinicians who influence its utilisation. So a wider cohort of stakeholders needs to be actively engaged throughout the procurement process to better address these factors that contribute to the technology being utilised and facilitate better outcomes for the patients that can benefit. Similar to one of the facts on the previous slide, we've got the ease of the technology operation and implementation. So this is paramount to ensure that devices are optimised for the clinician and the patient to allow for clinical use. This can then improve trust and confidence in the technology and improve the opportunity to promote that learning curve and clinical upskilling with the devices. So really key in driving the utilisation and adoption of the devices. One of my favourite factors is the co-design. So this is a fundamental principle when bringing a new product to market or developing future iterations of devices. So without involving all the stakeholders or the clinician, we've got limited opportunity for this to be successful. So we want to put that co-design to make better products, make it to market that work well for our patients. And then we need to think about the quantity of trained clinicians that are out there. So there's often a shortage of trained personnel capable of integrating robotics into clinical workflows. So the training that the clinicians need is paramount, and we need to think about how do we train these clinicians. We need to think about, can it be multimodal in terms of its delivery, and also how does it impact on the clinical services? Because if we're taking too much time to train someone, are we losing out on the revenue associated with the treatment time that we are losing as a result of that? And then a final barrier to this is thinking about consumer choice. So we are seeing a consolidated market with multiple manufacturers, and that can make the decision-making process challenging. We are seeing new manufacturers entering the market at an increased rate, but everybody is competing for the same dollar, pound, and euro out there. So how can this market research help us, and how can we reach the potential for these products to have their commercial potential as well as their projected revenues? Next slide, please. This is where health technology assessment, HTA, comes in. Health technology assessment and early health technology assessment is an evolving field which aims to provide decision support making and mitigate risk during early medical device innovation and product lifecycle management. To put early HTA in context, a brief understanding of medical device development is necessary. So medical device development is the multifaceted process which takes a concept from ideation and translates it to a product which can be utilized by its end users. The process fosters interdisciplinary collaboration amongst various professionals, for example, clinicians, engineers, business development executives, with the eventual goal of delivering a successful innovation outcome. The clinician is a key stakeholder in this process, and their role has traditionally been confined to assessing device efficacy and safety alone. However, we know there's much more we can offer. For example, the assessment of clinical need is arguably one of the most important roles in which the clinician can fulfill, and it impacts on all other aspects of health technology assessment. As the starting point often begins with a technological focus with hopes of translation to a device which solves a meaningful clinical issue, the clinician is in a unique position to understand the pain points and provide insight into the feasibility of a solution, given their knowledge of its context and the cycle of patient care. This lays the foundations towards developing a technology with the person at the center and not the technology. So clinicians can not only draw on their lived experience and observations, but they'll also conduct in-depth reviews of literature and interview key opinion leaders in the field to help support this. So later on in the tech development comes the conformity assessment, which entails characterizing the clinical performance and safety of a device. Historically, clinicians have been well versed with conformity assessment due to their knowledge in special areas of interest. In relation to the performance, we need to consider how we measure and evaluate this. Does it do what it claims to do, and how does it hold up to its direct comparators if available? The clinical trials and early feasibility studies utilizing both experienced clinicians and real-life patients is paramount to providing high-quality evidence to regulatory bodies and to support uptake of the device. So to back these claims up of what we can do, the research has shown that the earlier the involvement of clinicians in the health technology assessment process, the greater the savings in terms of time and cost, as earlier modifications can be addressed and implemented promptly. This involvement in the process helps ensure the device and value propositions are fit for market entry and will assist in the clinical adoption and utilization. So one aspect for future development for manufacturers is to create a specific framework to employ clinical input earlier in the very early and early health technology assessments. Involving that clinician earlier will be an additional, if not missing, piece. And when carried out in a structured manner, it would allow the feedback loop for manufacturers to pivot at an earlier stage when it's technically feasible and affordable, rather than at later phases where it may be more considerably challenging to do so. Next slide, please. So this case study focuses on late FOS, an innovative health tech company that is developing a device to help measure and assess biomechanics movement quality. And by working with the Mint Academy, Lakefoss ensures that its innovations meet the necessary clinical, regulatory, and economic standards that will make them both effective and viable for widespread adoption. So the key areas of focus for the partnership, clinical trials and evidence generation, key stakeholder engagement with clinicians and end users, prototype development and testing, and clinical consultancy at the very early and early health technology assessment stages. So this is an ongoing partnership, and we've completed the first couple of stages. So stage 1, we've looked at early assessment and feasibility already. So the collaboration began with an in-depth evaluation of the technology's potential to the clinician and the end user. This includes reviewing the scientific background and identifying key health outcomes and assessing initial feasibility. We've also done the next stage. So we've done clinical evidence generation and trial. So once the technology was shown to have some promise, we have worked alongside Lakefoss to conduct rigorous feasibility trials to generate the data needed to support the claims of efficacy and safety. We're now looking to progress towards the third stage, regulatory strategy and approval. So with the clinical evidence in hand, the Mint Academy will help Lakefoss navigate the complex regulatory landscape, ensuring that the product meets all necessary regulatory requirements for approval. Following that, we're on to stage 4, economic evaluation and market access. So finally, the partnership will focus on economic evaluations to demonstrate its cost effectiveness, ensuring that the device can be adopted by healthcare providers and reimbursed by insurance companies. And then stage 5 is commercial launch. So this is after completing the health technology assessment process. The technology is now ready for market introduction. And at that point, the Mint Academy will support Lakefoss in developing effective market strategies and education and facilitating negotiation with stakeholders to ensure that there is a successful commercialization. So in summary, the partnership between the Mint Academy and Lakefoss exemplifies a collaborative approach to health technology assessment that is critical for ensuring the successful commercialization of innovative healthcare solutions. By leveraging both the clinical expertise and market-driven strategies, this partnership ensures that new technologies are not only safe but effective, but also ready to deliver real-world impact. So as the robotic rehabilitation and medtech industry continues to evolve, collaboration like this will play an increasingly important role in ensuring that emerging technologies can be integrated into healthcare systems effectively and sustainably. The work being done today sets a strong precedent for future innovations in health technology and demonstrates how strategic partnerships can pave the way for a collaborative way of working between the industry and the clinician. Next slide, please. To finish, this is a testimonial from one of our collaborators, a company called Neurotech. They have developed a VR device for upper limb rehabilitation following a stroke. Our work with them has ensured that their device is accessible to patients with language impairments, that the tasks built within the VR games target the hand movements which are actually needed in everyday functioning, allowing our patients to work on meaningful rehabilitation. And there is one final slide, but it's just for me to say thank you for listening, and feel free to join us on our socials and any other questions.